In our subject for today, we are going to study two verses that we find in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 24, and verses 40 and 41. Matthew chapter 24 and verses 40 and 41. It says here, "Then shall two be in the field. The one shall be taken, and the other left. Two women shall be grinding at the mill. The one shall be taken, and the other left." Now, according to these two verses, there is going to be a group that will be taken and another group which will be left when Jesus comes. Now, I need to explain how these verses have been understood, have taught that the one who is taken to heaven when Jesus comes. And the one who is left behind on planet Earth when Jesus comes. Now, those who believe in the rapture basically believe the same thing about the word taken and the word left. They believe that the one taken is the saved person who's taken to heaven, and they believe that the one who is left behind. The only difference between the view of the Adventist Church and the view of those who believe in the rapture is when one will be taken and the other left. As Seventh-day Adventists, we believe that when Jesus comes the second time in power and glory, the only second coming, Jesus will take the saved to heaven and he will leave the lost behind. That's the Adventist view. Those who believe in the rapture believe that before Jesus comes in his glorious coming, he will take the church to heaven in what has been known as the rapture. And they believe that at that time, the righteous will be taken, the word taken, to heaven, and the wicked will be left behind. So basically, the Seventh-day Adventists, as well as those who believe in the rapture, understand the taken ones to be the saved and the left ones to be the lost. The only difference is when the righteous are taken and when the wicked are left. Now, this evening we're going to look at another option which I believe is the true biblical option. We need to be careful that we read the Bible carefully. We should not put into the Bible what is not in the Bible. Now, I want you to notice what this text does not say. The text does not say, one shall be taken with Jesus to heaven, and the other shall be left behind on earth. Neither does the text say that those who are taken are the righteous and those who are left are the wicked. The word righteous and wicked, the words righteous and wicked are not there. The word heaven and earth are not there. The text simply says that one is taken and the other is what? And the other is left. We need to analyze what the Bible means by taken and what it means by left. By the way, this is the passage that inspired the name of the series Left Behind. In fact, the 12-volume series Left Behind gets its name from these two verses of Matthew chapter 24. Now, we need to take a look at a very important word in verse 40. Sometimes the most important words are the smallest ones. Notice Matthew chapter 24 and verse 40. What is the word that this verse begins with? Then. Is that a time word? Does it denote time? Yes. In fact, several times in Matthew 24, the word then, which is the Greek word tote, is used to delineate a sequence of events, a chain of events, one happening right after the other. It says, then this will happen, then that will happen, then the other thing will happen. In other words, it is a word that indicates the time frame in which events take place. So notice that verse 40 begins by saying, then shall two be in the field. The question is, then when? Where would we have to look to find out which event the word then is referring to? We would have to go back to the previous verses, right? So let's go to verses 37 to 39 to see when this is going to take place. Notice Matthew chapter 24 and verse 37. But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. By the way, the word coming here is the word parousia. Verse 39. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not, that is those who were outside, knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Let me ask you, at what moment is it that one will be taken and the other will be left? At what historical event? Clearly, this will happen at the moment of the second coming of Jesus Christ. Are you agreed with me? Now, how many groups, according to this passage, verses 40 and 41, how many groups will there be at the coming of the Son of Man? There will be two groups. There will be the group who will be saved, and there are the group that will be taken away. Did you notice the expression? The flood came and what? The flood came and took them all away. So who was taken away? The righteous or the wicked? The wicked were taken away, according to this passage. Now, I want you to notice that Luke expresses it a little differently. Matthew says that when the flood came, the flood took them all away. But Luke expresses it a little differently. Notice Luke chapter 17 and verse 26. Luke chapter 17 and verse 26. Once again, it's speaking about the same event as we found described in Matthew chapter 24. And while you're looking for that verse, let me just mention that there's a special word that is used for flood in the days of Noah. It's used only for the flood that took place in the days of Noah. It's the Greek word kataklysmos. What English word do we get from kataklysmos? We get the word cataclysm from that word. In other words, the flood in Noah's day was some secret event, right? No, it was a what? It was a cataclysm. By the way, in the Old Testament, when the Old Testament speaks about the flood in Noah's day, it also uses a word that is used exclusively for the flood in Noah's day. Even though there were many Hebrew words, there are many Hebrew words for flood. But there is one word which is used for the flood in the days of Noah, and it's used exclusively for that. It's the word mabul, which basically also means to turn upside down. It's synonymous in a different language with the word cataclysm. In other words, the one will be taken and the other will be left when this cataclysm, when this catastrophe takes place. Now, let's go to Luke 17, verse 26. It says, "And as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be also in the days of the Son of Man. They did eat, they drank, they married wives, they were given in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and the flood came and what? And destroyed them all." Matthew says that the flood, what? Came and took them all away. The Gospel of Luke says that the flood came and what? Destroyed them. Who were the ones who were taken away? Those who were what? Those who were destroyed. Let me ask you, who were the ones who were left? The ones that were left were the ones who survived the flood. Isn't that right? The other ones were taken away. The wicked were taken away, and the righteous were what? Left. In a minute, I'm going to prove it to you. Now notice verse 29 of Luke chapter 17. 17:29. There's another event that Jesus uses to compare his coming with. It says, "But the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. How many of the inhabitants of Sodom and Gomorrah were left after the cities were destroyed with fire? There was none left. How many groups were there? 2. Those that were in the city, every single one of them was what? Was destroyed. Whereas Lot and his family were what? Were preserved or were saved. Are you clear so far on this point? Now, we need to go back to the Old Testament to analyze the story of the flood. We can't just stay in Matthew, because in Matthew you have a reference to the flood. So Matthew is telling us, Jesus is saying in Matthew, in order to understand this, you have to go back where? You have to go back to Genesis. So the broader context of what we find here in Matthew 24 is the flood story in the Old Testament. Now, we've noticed from Matthew 24 that there were 2 groups. There was one group which was totally destroyed, every single one of them, and there was one group which was preserved, both like in the days of Noah and in the days of Lot. Now let's go in our Bibles to Genesis chapter 7 and examine the flood story, because that's where Jesus sends us. Genesis chapter 7 and verses 22 and 23. Genesis 7, 22 and 23. It's speaking about the flood in Noah's day, and it says there, all in whose nostrils was the breath of life of all that was in the dry land died. And every living substance was what? Was destroyed. Is that word in Matthew 24, in Luke? It's implied in Matthew where it says took them all away, but in Luke it says destroyed. So it says every living substance was destroyed, which was upon the face of the ground, both man and cattle and the creeping things and the fowl of the heaven, and they were what? Here's the word again. They were destroyed from the earth. And Noah only, what's the next word? Only remained, and then the King James translators add the word alive. Only Noah remained alive, and they that were with him in the ark. How many groups? 2 groups. Which was the group that was destroyed? The wicked. Which was the group which remained? The saved. Now, I'd like to read how several modern versions translate Genesis 7:23. What would be a synonym of remained? Only Noah remained, along with his family. Only Noah was what? Left. Now, allow me to mention several Bible versions that translate it this way, and then we're going to do an analysis of this word in the Old and New Testament. See, tonight we're dealing with technical matters, but we have to have these matters when we deal with people who use these verses to try and teach the rapture. Don't we have to have a reason for the faith that is in us? Do we want them to be on this earth during the tribulation when they haven't prepared for the tribulation? No. So we better help them understand these verses carefully. Because, you know, somebody once said to me, it was an Adventist, he says, you know, you have all of this analysis of words and context and everything. He says, the texts are very clear. It says, one is taken and the other is left. Clear as day. The taken ones are taken to heaven and the left ones are left behind. He says, isn't it true that Jesus is going to take us to heaven when he comes? I said, yes. Isn't it true that the wicked are going to be left behind? I said, yes. There are texts in the New Testament that talk about it that way. He says, well, there you have it. I said, that doesn't mean that taken and left means the same thing in this passage. Are you understanding what I'm saying? We need to analyze the total context, the meaning of words, etc. Now, the NIV, which is the most used version today, says that the wicked were wiped out and only Noah and his family were left. The New American Standard Bible says that all of the wicked were blotted out and only Noah and his family were left. The Revised Standard Version says that the wicked were blotted out and only Noah and his family were left. The Jerusalem Bible, which is a Roman Catholic Bible, says that all of the wicked were destroyed and only Noah and his family were left. The New English Bible says that the wicked were wiped out and only Noah and his family survived. So what does it mean when it says that Noah and his family remained or survived? It means that only they were what? Only they were left. By the way, the word that is translated destroyed here in Genesis 7 in the King James Version, referring to those who were destroyed by the flood, is not the common Hebrew word for destruction. It is a word that means to wipe out, to blot out, to erase, to totally eradicate. Now, I want to ask you this. When the flood came, did anyone outside the ark survive? Who were the only ones who survived? The ones that were inside the ark. So how many kinds of people were outside the ark? Only one kind of person. All of them were what? Destroyed. Those who use this passage for the rapture have a very big problem. Because they say that the righteous will be taken to heaven at the rapture, and some of the people on earth will be destroyed, but others will stay what? Alive. Are you understanding me or not? They say that airplanes will crash and cars will crash because they'll be left without pilots and without drivers, and ships will collide in the sea, you know. But will there be people alive according to them after the rapture? Yes. Does this fit the model of the flood? No, because in the flood, there weren't the saved ones in the ark, and then outside, some destroyed and some alive. It was two groups. The saved inside, and everyone who was not saved was what? Was eradicated. So this idea that it says one shall be taken and the other left, and that the taken one is saved and the one that is left behind, doesn't fit the context, because the context says that it was like the flood. Then, as it was in the days of Noah, will be the coming of the Son of Man. Are you understanding what I'm saying? So it cannot refer to a pre-tribulation rapture. Now, allow me to quote from a Hebrew scholar. His name is Gary G. Cohen, and he defines the Hebrew word left. See, the very word that's used in Genesis 7:23, the word left, which is translated remained in the King James Version, translated survived in other versions, and it's translated, most of them, left. It's the Hebrew word shawar. Now here comes the statement. Shawar seems to be used exclusively. What does exclusively mean? Only. Seems to be used exclusively to indicate the static action of surviving after an elimination process. Did you understand that? He continues saying, this process of elimination may have been natural, and then he puts in parentheses Ruth 1 verse 3, Naomi's husband died and she was left. It may have been humanly caused, puts in parentheses 1 Samuel 9:24, behold that which is left. Here Samuel is speaking of meat which was intentionally left for Saul to eat. Or the elimination may have been the direct result of a divine intervention. And then he quotes Exodus 10:19, there remained not one locust in all the coasts of Egypt when God blew them away. No matter what the cause, however, shawar, that is the word left, points to that which remains or has survived. So how about the scenario that says when Jesus comes, the ones that are left are the ones that are left for destruction? Doesn't fit the meaning of the word, at least in the Old Testament. And you say, how can we use the Old Testament meaning of the word? Because in Genesis 7:23, it's referring to the same event as Matthew 24. In Genesis 7:23, you have two groups. It says one of them was destroyed, and the other one was what? Left. Do we have that with relation to the flood in Matthew 24 and Luke chapter 17? Is there a group which is destroyed or taken away? Yes. And there's another group which is what? Left. One will be taken and the other left. Wow, you say, we're starting to get something interesting here. We've got it the wrong way around. So the left ones are the ones who survive, and the taken ones are the ones that are destroyed. You say, I'm not quite convinced yet. That's because we haven't finished. We have a lot more to say. Allow me to give you some examples from the Old Testament of the word shawar. We gave the definition from a Hebrew scholar. Now let me give you some Bible verses. Exodus 14, verse 28. It's speaking about the destruction of the Egyptians in the Red Sea. It says here, the waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen. Even Pharaoh's entire army that had gone into the sea after them. Not even one of them, shawar. Not one single one, what? Was left. The King James translates it, not one single one was what? Was left or remained. So let me ask you, who would the remained ones be here? Who are the left ones in this verse? If anyone had been left, they would have what? They would have survived. In other words, the survivors are those who are left. The other ones were what? Were washed away. Notice Judges chapter 4 and verse 16. Another example. Judges chapter 4 and verse 16. It says, but Barak pursued the chariots and the army as far as Harosheth Hagoyim. And all the army of Sisera fell by the edge of the sword. Not even one was left. In other words, no one survived, no one remained. If someone had been left, would they have been the saved? Yes or no? Would they have been the saved? Absolutely. But no one was left alive. No one was saved because everybody was destroyed. Notice also Isaiah chapter 4 and verse 3. Isaiah chapter 4 and verse 3. Once again, the word shawar is used here. It says there, and it shall come to pass that he that is left in Zion and he that remaineth in Jerusalem shall be called holy. Who are the left ones? They're the ones that are left behind for destruction, right? No. It says, and it shall come to pass that he that is left in Zion and he that remaineth in Jerusalem shall be called holy. Even everyone that is written among the living in Jerusalem. So what does the word left refer to in the Old Testament? It refers to those who remain alive when there is this what? This catastrophe or this global cataclysm. Is this clear in your mind? Now, if you go to the website, you'll find many, many other verses. And if you go to a concordance, you'll find even more. All you have to do is look up the word left or remained or survived. And you'll find the many references to this word in the Old Testament. Now you're saying, well, Pastor, okay, that's Old Testament. Actually, it doesn't even matter if it's the Old Testament. Do you know why? Because Jesus, in Matthew 24, sent us back to Genesis 7. Doesn't he? It's different languages, but it's the same event. Are you following me? Now, let's notice the use of this word in the New Testament. The New Testament word that is found in Matthew 24, verse 40 and 41 is the Greek word aphiemi. The word is used in two senses in the Greek. And by the way, it's used also in two senses in the English. For example, it describes, first of all, someone leaving from one place to another. For example, I say, Pastor Jensen left. That's one sense in which this word aphiemi is used in the Greek. But there's another sense in which it's used also in the New Testament, as in this: he ate all the apple pie, none is left. Both of those senses are used in the New Testament for the word aphiemi, the word that is used for left in Matthew chapter 24 and verses 40 and 41. Now, let me give you two examples of the use of this word to show that it's what remains or what is left. Matthew 24 and verse 2. Matthew chapter 24 and verse 2. It's speaking about the destruction of the temple, and notice what Jesus says. And Jesus said unto them, see ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be what? Left. The word aphiemi. There shall be left, not be left, here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. Are you understanding the sense of the word here? In other words, no stone will be what? Will be left, will remain after the temple is destroyed. Notice Mark chapter 12 and verse 22, another use of this word aphieme, left, which is used in Matthew 24 and verse 40. It says there, speaking about the woman who had 7 husbands, it says, and the 7 had her and left no seed. In other words, no seed what? Survived. There was no seed left. And last of all, the woman died also. So notice that the word aphieme, left, also is used in the same sense that it is used in the Old Testament, the word shawar. That which remains, or that which is what? Which is left over. That which survives. Now, we need to take a look at the word taken. Is the word left clear in your mind now, biblically speaking? Yes? What does left mean? Left behind for destruction? No. It means that which will survive. That which will remain after the destruction. That which is left after the destruction. That's what it means. Now you say, what about the word taken? Here it gets even more interesting. Is it important to study the meaning of words? See, most people just superficially, they'll go to this text, they say clear, clear as can be. There's going to be a pre-tribulation rapture, there's going to be a group taken to heaven, and there's going to be a group left behind. The taken to heaven are the saved, and the ones left behind are the wicked. And they say, what part of that don't you understand? And then you have to tell them, what I don't understand is, have you studied this in the light of everything the Bible teaches about it? Because things might appear to say one thing's on the surface, but they're really not saying that. Are you understanding what I'm saying? Now, notice the meaning of the word taken. It's the Hebrew word lachad. And I'm quoting now from Walter C. Kaiser, a renowned expert in Old Testament Hebrew. He says this: most of the 121 uses of lachad deal with men capturing or seizing towns, men, spoils, and even a kingdom. It is used figuratively of the entrapment of men who are caught in snares of all sorts, laid by their enemies. This word serves as a figure of divine judgment. What does the word taken mean? It's a figure of divine what? Judgment. The stone of stumbling will cause many to stumble, fall, be broken, be ensnared, and be captured. When God shakes the foundations of the earth just prior to the millennium, and then he puts in parentheses, many days of Isaiah 24:22. The ungodly, notice, the ungodly shall be seized in the trap. The word seized there is the word taken. Isaiah 24 verse 18 he quotes, as were those who drunkenly mocked the prophet's message. So what does the word taken mean? It means to overcome a kingdom or to overcome an individual. It means to seize. It means to take, as taking a kingdom in war. Now we need to take a look at some texts from the Old Testament to corroborate this view. Go with me to Joshua chapter 8 and verse 8. Joshua chapter 8, and we're going to read verse 8, and then we'll go to verse 17, verse 21, and verse 22. And there are several key words here that I'm going to underline. It says there in Joshua 8 verse 8, and it shall be, when ye have taken the city, that's the word lachad, when ye have taken the city, that ye shall set the city on fire. What does it mean to take the city? It means to what? It means to burn it up, right? According to the commandment of the Lord shall ye do. See, I have commanded you. And then verse 17, and when Joshua and all Israel saw that the ambush had taken the city, there you have the word again, and that the smoke of the city ascended, then they turned again and slew the men of Ai. And now notice, and there was not a man left in Ai. This is a very interesting passage because it uses both words. It uses the word lachad. That refers to those who are what? Saved or destroyed? To those who are burnt, to those who are destroyed. What does the word left, shawar, refer to? It refers to those who remain, if they had remained, because they really didn't. No one remained. Let's notice once again. It says, and when Joshua and all Israel saw the ambush had taken the city, and that the smoke of the city ascended, then they turned again and slew the men of Ai. And there was not a man what? Left in Ai. That's because no one what? No one survived. No one remained. They were all what? Destroyed. If someone had been left, would they have been saved? Absolutely. Then it says, and there was not a man left in Ai or Bethel that went not out after Israel, and they left the city open and pursued after Israel. And the other issued out of the city against them. So they were in the midst of Israel, some on this side and some on that side, and they smote them so that they let none of them remain or escape. See, there you have the Hebrew word shawar again. No one what? No one remained or escaped. I want you to remember that word escaped, because we're going to come back to it. The word remained there is the Hebrew word shawar. The word escaped is a different word. So in this passage about the destruction of Ai, let me ask you, who are the ones who are taken? Those who are destroyed or those who are spared? Come on, you can tell me. Those who are destroyed. Who are the ones that are left, if there had been anybody left? They would be the ones who were spared, or who were left what? Were left alive. Are you catching the meaning of the terms? Now notice Judges 1 verse 8, another use of this word, taken. Judges 1 and verse 8. It says, now the children of Judah had fought against Jerusalem, and had what? Taken it. And what does that mean, and taken it? It explains, and smitten it with the edge of the sword, and set the city on fire. What does it mean to take the city? That the city was taken? It means that the city was what? Was smitten by the edge of the sword, and it was what? Set on fire. So does the word taken refer to taking some righteous people somewhere, or does it refer to those who are overtaken and destroyed? It refers to those who are overtaken and destroyed. Notice also Proverbs 5 verse 22. Here it speaks about an individual. It says, speaking about the wicked, his own iniquities shall take the wicked himself. The word take there, once again, is the Hebrew word lachat. So it says, his own iniquities shall take the wicked himself. What does that mean, shall take him? It means that his sins are going to what? Destroy him. That's right. And he shall be holden with the cords of his sins. In other words, he's going to be strangled by his sins. Notice Ecclesiastes 7:26. This is a very important verse because of several words that are used. We'll come back to these words. Ecclesiastes 7 verse 26, it says, and I find more bitter than death the woman whose heart is as what? Snares. Don't forget that word. Snares and nets. And her hands as bands. Whoso pleaseth God shall what? Escape from her. Notice the words. Snares. There's the word escape from her. But the sinner shall be what? Shall be taken by her. Three key words. Number one, snares. She's like a snare. Number two, the one who follows the Lord shall what? Escape from her. So who are the escaped ones? The righteous or the unrighteous? The righteous. And it says that the sinner will be what? Will be taken by her. What does that mean, will be taken by her? It means that they will be destroyed, or they would be done in. Are you understanding me? Yes or no? Remember the three key words. Snares, taken, and escape. Notice also Isaiah chapter 8 verses 14 and 15. You say, oh Pastor, this is kind of boring, that's academic. Yes it is. But academic things are not so bad, because we have to be able to give an explanation of what these things mean. Do you think it's important to be able to give an explanation? I mean, if we can explain this passage biblically, then they're going to have to change the name of the series, Left Behind, because they've got it wrong. Because the ones that are left behind are saved, and the ones that are taken are lost. Notice Isaiah 8, 14 and 15. This is a messianic prophecy. It says, and he, that is the Messiah, shall be for a sanctuary, but for a stone of stumbling, and for a rock of offense to both the houses of Israel, for a gin, and for a what? for a snare to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. Notice the word snare again. And many among them shall stumble and fall and be broken and be snared and be what? Taken. The Hebrew word lachad. Who are the taken ones here? The righteous or the wicked? It is the wicked ones. It gives several synonyms. Stumble, fall, be broken, snared, and taken. Taken refers to the lost. It does not refer to the saved. Now notice Luke 21 and verses 35 and 36. Do you remember the words snare and escape that are used, that we just read? Notice how Jesus uses these words in connection with his second coming, and he applies them to the wicked. It says there in Luke 21 verses 35 and 36 the following. For as a snare shall it come on all them that dwell on the face of the whole earth. That is, the second coming of Christ will come as a what? As a snare. Watch ye therefore and pray always, that ye may be accounted worthy to, excuse me, to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. Who would be the ones who escape? The righteous, right? The righteous escape. Who are the ones who are caught in the snare? The wicked. But did you notice that in the Old Testament the word snare, the word escape, is used in the context of the word taken in referring to the wicked? Did you understand that point? It's very, very clear. Now notice Isaiah 24 and verse 6. Isaiah 24 is speaking directly about the second coming of Christ. We don't have time to go into all of the details, but you read verse 1, it says that the earth is going to be made empty, it's going to be laid waste, it's going to be turned upside down. Verse 3 says that it's going to be utterly emptied, it's going to be utterly spoiled. Later on it speaks about a global earthquake. It says the whole earth, the whole world is going to tremble and it's going to move back and forth. In other words, this is a global catastrophe. This is the second coming of Christ. And I want you to notice verse 6. It says, therefore hath the curse devoured the earth, and they that dwell therein are desolate. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth are burned, and few men left. Who are the left ones in this verse? The ones that are burned, right? No. The left ones are the righteous. They survive when everyone else is what? Is burned. Now what about the wicked? Do you know that in this same chapter the word taken is used to refer to the wicked? Let's read verses 17 and 18. It says in verse 17, and it shall come to pass that he who fleeth from the noise of the fear shall fall into the pit. And he that cometh up out of the midst of the pit shall be what? Shall be taken in the snare. Is that important? Who are the taken ones? The wicked. Who are the left ones? Those who are not burned, those who are left, in other words, alive. And then the passage continues saying, he that cometh out of the midst of the pit shall be taken in the snare, for the windows from on high are open, and the foundations of the earth do shake. So you say, okay, Pastor, in the Old Testament the word taken means the destroyed. And we've already proven biblically that the word left means those who are left alive. When the destruction comes, when the eradication comes, the left are left alive, and you've proved from the Old Testament that those who are taken are the ones who are surprised and they're destroyed. But what about the New Testament? What about the word taken in the New Testament? Well, allow me to say that the Greek word which is translated taken in the New Testament is, and I'm going to have to go into some meanings of words now, is the Greek word lambano. Those of you who are going to get the DVDs will have all of these things spelled out in the DVDs. So the word lambano is the word that is used to translate taken. Now this is a very versatile word. It can mean many different things. One of its basic meanings, however, according to the Greek English lexicon of Arndt and Gingrich, which is one of the best lexicons, one of the best Greek English dictionaries that exists in the world today, one of the definitions of the word lambano is to take away, to remove, to lay hands on, or to seize. Now, there are examples in the New Testament of this use of the word, to seize, to lay hands on, to take away. For example, in Acts 2:23, we're told that Jesus was taken or seized to be crucified. In Matthew 21, verse 39, we find that Jesus was seized and cast out of the vineyard by his enemies. And in 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 13, it says that no temptation has taken us which cannot be overcome. So the word taken can mean to seize, in the same sense in which it is used in the Old Testament. Now, I need to tell you something about Greek words in the Old Testament, and we have this phenomenon also in the New Testament. Did you know that we have many English words that have a prepositional prefix? Pastor Jensen, he's smiling from ear to ear. He said, we're going to study some English here, because Pastor Jensen is a master in the English language. Now, let me give you some examples of words that are connected with prepositions. The word hypertension. What does the word hypertension mean? Hyper means, it comes from the Greek. Hyper, high, tension, blood pressure, right? High blood pressure. Then you have the word hypoglycemia. What does the word hypo mean? Low. And in Greek, hupo means under or low. So hypoglycemia means low blood sugar. Then you have the word catastrophe. It's the Greek preposition kata. And what it means is to overturn or to turn upside down. You have the word, for example, perimeter. Peri is a Greek preposition. And perimeter means the outer boundary. In other words, these prepositions denote location. High, low, around, etc. Then you have the word antichrist. It's the one who tries to occupy the place. The word anti means to take the place of, or it can also mean against. You have the word paralegal. Ever heard of the word paralegal? Paralegal means one who works alongside a lawyer, because the Greek preposition para means alongside or next to. So in English, we attach prepositions to words, and they give a sense of direction to the words. High, low, in place of. In other words, they give position. Are you understanding me? In the Greek language, we have the same phenomenon. The word lambano many times is given a prepositional prefix. Let me give you 4 examples of how the word lambano has prepositional prefixes that give the sense of location. For example, you have the word ana lambano. Ana means up. So ana lambano, lambano means to take or to seize. So ana lambano means to seize upwards or to take upwards. Then you have the word sun lambano. The sun means to take with. So lambano with sun means to take with, not simply to take. Then you have the word kata lambano, which means, lambano means to take, and really kata lambano means to overturn or to turn upside down. And then you have the word para lambano. We have the word paralegal, which means one who works alongside a lawyer. You have the word para lambano. That means to be taken alongside someone. Now, let me ask you, which of these combinations with the word lambano do you think is used in Matthew chapter 24? It's hard to guess, but I'll tell you. It's the Greek word para lambano, which means, paralambano means alongside someone. To be taken alongside. Now, why would the word paralambano be used instead of some other word? Because the text says that there will be 2 people there. One alongside another. One who is alongside that individual will be taken, paralambano. The other will be left. So the correct word which Jesus used, it's the correct Greek word because it's talking about 2 people that are alongside each other. And that's what paralambano means. It means to take someone who is alongside someone else. Are you understanding what I'm saying? So the Greek word which is used in Matthew 24 is paralambano. It means one will be taken, one who is alongside someone else will be what? Will be taken. And the other one, who is alongside that individual, will be what? Will be left. Now you say, why do you take time to do this? I'm going to show you in a minute the reason why. Is it clear? Do you understand what I've said so far about the word lambano? It's not easy to explain without having, the pictures right here. But I hope that you were able to visualize it. The word lambano alone means to take. When you add the preposition, it adds the location of where it is taken, or the position where the individual is. So paralambano is used in Matthew 24, 40 and 41 to describe those who are alongside. Now I'd like you to go with me to 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. Leave that on hold for now. Put it in the back of your mind, but make sure that it's there in a file that you can retrieve. And let's go to 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 and verse 15. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 and verse 15. It says here, this is a very well-known passage, "For this we say unto you by the word of the Lord, that we which are alive and remain unto the coming of the Lord shall not prevent," that is, shall not precede them which are asleep. Now, let's stop there for a minute. Let's go back and read more carefully. It says, "For this we say unto you by the word of the Lord, that we which are alive and," that are alive and, that are alive and, who are the remaining ones? Those who are receiving Jesus. Right? Okay. "For this we say unto you by the word of the Lord, that we which are alive and remain unto the coming of the Lord." Same coming of the Lord as Matthew 24? Same context? Yes. "Shall not precede them which were asleep. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God. And the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we which are alive and," remain. Who are the remaining ones here? Who are alive and remain, "shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord." Who are the remaining ones? Who are those who are left? Those who are alive and are left are the righteous, not the wicked. So much for the idea that the wicked are left behind and the righteous are taken. Biblically, it's the opposite. The righteous are left alive and the wicked are taken in their sins. They are destroyed, they are surprised, they are overcome, they are overturned. Raise your hand if you're understanding what I'm saying here. It's very, very clear. Now, you say, now what about the taken ones? That just talks about those who are alive and remain. Those who are alive and left. What about the taken ones? Well, we have to go to the very next chapter. Notice 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 1. By the way, do you still have that information there in the corner of your mind? Still there? We're going to have to retrieve it in a moment. So make sure it's not way deep in your subconscious. Notice 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 1. "For yourselves," what does the word "for" indicate? Why does this chapter begin with the word "for"? Is there any connection with the previous chapter? Is there a connection? Does the word "for" indicate a connection with chapter 4? Absolutely. He says, "For yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord," what is the day of the Lord? Coming of Christ. "The day of the Lord so cometh as a" what? "As a thief in the night. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden" what? "Destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape." By the way, is the Apostle Paul using a lot of words that Jesus used in Matthew 24 when he warned about his second coming? Did Jesus warn that he was going to come as a thief? Did he warn that there was going to be a group that were going to be taken over by destruction? Did he describe his coming as a woman in travail? The people, as they wait for him? You read Matthew chapter 24. There it is. Same identical words. Is Paul describing the same coming as Matthew 24? Yes, he is. Now, notice, once again, for you yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with a child, and they shall not escape. There you have the words again. Destruction, escape. But ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that that day should overtake you as a thief. Now, the information in the file. What was the word? Paralambano, which means to take someone who is what? Alongside. To take from alongside another. The word that is used here is the Greek word katalambano. Okay? Now, who are the ones who are katalambanoed? If I can invent a word here in chapter 5. Who are the katalambanoed? The righteous or the wicked? The wicked. Because the wicked are overtaken. They are katalambanoed. Right? Is Paul speaking about the same thing that Jesus spoke of? Yes. Does the word paralambano bear a close relationship with katalambano? Is it describing the same group? Yes, it is. Only in Matthew it's emphasizing, it uses the word paralambano because it's talking people that are what? Alongside each other. Well, in chapter 5 of 1 Thessalonians, the Apostle Paul is not emphasizing that point. He's talking about primarily about the destruction of the wicked. And so he says, but ye brethren are not in darkness, that that day should overtake you as a thief. Ye are all children of the light and the children of the day. We are not of the night, nor of darkness. Therefore let us not sleep, as do others, but let us watch and be sober. For they that are asleep, sleep in the night, and they that be drunken are drunken in the night. Let me ask you this. Does Jesus use the same terminology in Matthew chapter 24 when he warns about his coming? Does he say to watch? Does he say don't go to sleep? Does he say don't get drunk? We're not going to read the verses because you know them. Does he say he's going to come as a thief? Does he say that sudden destruction will overtake the wicked? Yes, he does. So is Matthew 24 speaking about the same thing as 1 Thessalonians 5? Yes. In Matthew, the word is paralambano. They shall be taken. One shall be taken. The Apostle Paul says in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 that the wicked will be overtaken. So let me ask you, are the taken ones in Matthew 24 and the overtaken ones in 1 Thessalonians 5 the same group? They are definitely the same group. Absolutely. No doubt about it. By the way, the word katalambano is also used in John 8, 3 and 4. If you go with me there very quickly. John chapter 8, verses 3 and 4. It says here, speaking about the woman who was taken in adultery, and the scribes and the Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery. What does that mean, she was taken in adultery? What does that mean? Surprised, seized, overcome, right? And then it says, and when they had set her in the midst, they say unto him, Master, this woman was what? Was taken in adultery in the very what? In the very act. Now, allow me to do a comparison between what Jesus says in Matthew 24 and what the Apostle Paul has to say in 1 Thessalonians 5. I made a list here that's going to come out on the DVD. But I read all of the warnings of Jesus in Matthew chapter 24 after he spoke about the days of Noah. And these are the words that Jesus uses in Matthew 24 as well as in Luke 21. Left, taken, watch, thief in the night, sober, destroyed, pray, escape, unexpectedly. Those are Matthew 24 words. Now here are the words that the Apostle Paul uses in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. Remain, overtaken, watch, thief in the night, sober, destruction, pray, not escape, suddenly. Is it the same event? Of course it is. So let me ask you, is taken in Matthew 24 the same as overtaken in the writings of Paul? In the writings of Paul, the overtaken are the destroyed. So who are the taken in Matthew 24? They are the wicked. The only thing is, in Matthew 24, Jesus speaks about paralambano because one is beside the other. So he has to use the preposition paralambano. One who is alongside another will be taken. The Apostle Paul is not emphasizing that one will be taken and the other left. And so the Apostle Paul uses the word katalambano, which means to overcome, it means to overturn, or it means to destroy. But once again, the taken ones, or the overtaken ones, are not the saved, they are the what? They are the lost. In other words, in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, those who are alive and remain, or are left, are the righteous. In chapter 5, those who are overtaken are the wicked. So in Matthew 24, those who are taken must be the wicked, and those who are left must be what? Must be the righteous. Are you with me? Say, wow, this blows me away. Well, when I've shared it with many Adventist preachers, they've been blown away. I've even had some of them say, it sounds good, sounds reasonable, but I'll believe the way the church has always believed. So be it. If you don't want to look at all the Bible evidence and accept the Bible for what it teaches, that's your prerogative. Kind of reminds me of the story of the farmer who had a visit from a preacher. The preacher says to him, I wanted to convert him. And of course, you have to find out what the person believes first. So he says, sir, what do you believe? I believe what my church believes. Okay. Pastor wasn't going to give up, so he says to him, what does your church believe? The church believes what I believe. He still wasn't going to give up, so he says, what do you and your church believe? We both believe the same thing. There's a lot of Adventists that are that way. Simply because it's been taught from time immemorial, they say that's the way it is. We cannot afford to be that way. Light increases as time goes by. And we have to be accurate in our biblical interpretation. And we have to be able to explain these things in a rational way to these people. You know, if we can undermine their arguments, these big things, because we're not dealing with the small arguments that they use. We're talking about the 70 weeks. This passage that speaks about taken and left. We're going to discuss the man of sin of 2 Thessalonians 2. We've discussed the little horn. We're discussing the biggies. And if you can plant seeds of doubts in the minds of these people, showing them the biblical truth on several of these, they'll say, probably the rest of it is wrong too. Are you understanding me? I have a passion for these people. These people love the Lord, but they're misguided. And who's going to show them that they're misguided? We have been called to do that. Now I want to go to one final text. By the way, Matthew uses the word taken. Paul uses the word overtaken, and if you read Luke 21, Luke uses the word come upon or destroyed. So taken, destroyed, and overtake are the same thing. They're all parallel. Matthew 24, very quickly. We only have 1 minute left. Matthew 24, verses 37 to 39. Why is this important that we've studied, besides showing people the truth? It says there in Matthew 24, and we're going to read it very quickly, but as the days of Noah were, so also shall the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark. The first until marks the moment when Noah what? Entered the ark. And then notice what he continues saying. And knew not until the flood came. What does the second until mark? What moment of time? When it begins to what? To rain. How much time transpired between when they entered the ark and when it started to rain? 7 days. And during those 7 days, they did know something. Those who were outside the ark knew not. What didn't they know? They didn't know that they were what? Lost. Do you know that probation for the human race, for the world, is going to close before Jesus comes? Did you know that? And there's going to be a terrible time of tribulation on planet Earth. And only a faith which is unshakable and unbreakable will lead us through that time of tribulation. The devil knows it. That's why he tells the church, you're going to be taken out before Jesus comes. The tribulation is for the Jews. And people, when Jesus comes, are going to be without shelter because they were expecting a rapture, and the rapture never happened. And they're going to have to go through the time of trouble. Let me ask you, did Noah and his family go through a time of trouble? Imagine being in this big boat full of animals. 1 day passes, nothing. 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days. Was the faith of Noah and his family severely tested? Yes. But then it started to rain, and the people realized outside that probation had closed 7 days earlier, and they were all lost. We need to show people that they will go through the tribulation if they're alive when Jesus comes. And we must prepare appropriately. Father in heaven, we thank you for the study we've been able to have this evening. We thank you for the clarity of your holy word. I ask, Lord, that you will help these things to remain in our minds, that we might be able to share these concepts with those who love you, who are sincere, and who are hungering and thirsting for the truth. We thank you, Lord, for having been with us and for hearing our prayer, for we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.